September edition, we are talking about the, is going to be introducing herself in a second. But after that, she will be joined by Michal, and we will have a panel discussion on the topic. And the talk will be on, like I said, the dilemmas when designing for sustainability. And the panel discussion, let's see where that goes. I think we have enough questions and things to talk about, so it will be also a nice point for you to interact and ask your questions and maybe even share your thoughts. So again, you're not forced to having your camera on, but feel free to have it. But with that, let's get started with Cecilie. And I would like now to stop sharing and give the opportunity for her to share.
Thank you so much. I will share, and you haven't seen the last of this great picture of me. So I will just remove this. All right, so yeah, my name is Cecilie, and I work as a product designer in the team of sustainability at Zalando. As has already been mentioned, and as I'm sure you know, the topic today will be around the dilemmas that we face as designers when we work with sustainability. And one of the things that I've been pondering is, how do you create these like great user-friendly, delightful interfaces and solutions when you're trying to guide customers towards a more sustainable behavior? And I can already now maybe come with a little bit of a spoiler, because I don't know. So this talk will not be about me giving you tips on like how to make perfect, like easy to use solutions where people will just understand it immediately. On the other hand, I'd like to share with you some of the challenges that we face, and hopefully, as Matthias also said, we'll be able to have a discussion about this later on. So as I'm sure you all know, and as I'm sure you're also one of the reasons you're here, sustainability is one of these topics that's become more and more like at everyone's lips in the past couple of years. Everyone is talking about it, and especially in the fashion industry, this is something that's been gaining more and more attention and more momentum, especially the like criticism that the fashion industry is to a high extent contributing to the dirty footprints that we're leaving on both the planet and the people on it. So there's definitely a big momentum to talk about this, and this is also one of the reasons that Zalando has embarked on this journey and committed to become a sustainable fashion platform with a positive impact on people and the planet. This is one of the goals. So what does this actually mean for us as designers, or in my team? Because my team is the digital experience team of sustainability. So we're not really like, we're not designing the clothes that we're selling. We're also not responsible for the assortment that we carry on our site. What we're trying to do is that what we're responsible for basically is helping customers when they land on our site and try to help them make better choices and enable them to actually live out these ideas of sustainability when they land on our site, and really like try to via the digital interface and the experience see where we can make them more informed about the choices that they have. So more concretely, what we really try to help customers do is we try to help them recognize the products that we have in our assortment that are deemed less impactful. Also understand, what does this even mean when we talk about something that has less of an impact on the planet and people. Also, we want to try to help people actually compare different products with each other to see which ones are better. And actually, like most importantly, we also want to make sure that people trust that the information we put in front of them is like genuine and factful, and it's actually not just something we do as a clever marketing stunt, but it's something that has like scientific backing behind it. So more like specifically how people interact with what we work with is when they encounter sustainable products on our site or more sustainable products. So that could be, for instance, when we show like collections of products that are more sustainable. It could be entry points into the catalog with these items. It could be when you filter for items. But most importantly, it's when you encounter them on a product. So maybe you've already seen this sometime on other sites as well, but on Zalando specifically, we show this by this little green sustainability flag on a product, and then you're able to see, okay, this has been labeled because it meets this criteria. So just to give you some background, how we define a product as sustainable or more sustainable. And this is something that I'm continuously correcting myself, because it's also an important thing to mention, that we're actually not even able to say a sustainable product, because what is even a sustainable product? Any product that you create in the world will like inevitably make some kind of footprint on the planet. So a sustainable product does really not exist. What we can only say is something is more sustainable, or we label it as sustainability in a way to kind of like get around this. So the way a product gets this flag is that it should meet one of these criteria that we're collaborating with that would make it be labeled as sustainability. And as you can see here, there's a lot of reading and there's a lot of like research and data that goes behind this. But basically, what people want, people are not interested, even though people are more and more interested in sustainability overall, people aren't after like long like articles and documents about what makes a sustainable item or what is the criteria about. People really just want a super easy to understand, very glanceable view of, okay, which product are better than others. Furthermore, one of our founding values at our company, and something that we're continuously like asked to think about when we design, is to have simplicity in mind. Really not overcomplicate things. It's one of the things that we use almost as a test when we figure out if we should do something or release something, is that it shouldn't be overly complex to understand. If something is too complicated or too complex, it might be a sign that we haven't understood the problem well enough. So it's really something that we're trying to continuously ask ourselves, like, how can we make this super simple and easy to understand? But now the problems start, because what is even a more sustainable product? Like I already told you, like there's a lot of information that goes behind when something needs to be labeled as better or worse. And it's very hard actually to measure if something, what makes something better or better than something else. So one of the things that we've tried to work towards in our team is to come up with like almost like a ranking system, because that's something that people more and more recognize as a signifier of measuring things or comparing things, is to see like a scale of what is better than the other. So a place to start if you want to implement this for sustainability is to actually start at the very core of what the products we sell consist of, which is material. So like the fabric that your clothes that you're wearing is made of is one of the first things you can start looking at if you want to deem how the impact your clothes are making. So what we've been working at or with for the past many months now is something we call a material environmental rating. So how could this work? And now I'm going to show you some examples of like a mock-up that we used in a test. And I'm going to use this as an example just to show you how easily something can become very complex when we're dealing with this topic. So here we have two dresses. And let's also just bear in mind that even though sustainability is a super hot topic and it's something that everyone finds very interesting and relevant, it's still not the prime reason people come to Zalando. People are mainly interested in finding clothes that fit them. And it's definitely not the first thing they're going to judge an item on. What you're looking for when you look for a dress, for instance, is all these other factors, such as, does the color fit me? Does it look good on me? Is the price within my budget? Is it a brand I know? Can I wear it on multiple occasions? All these things need to be in place before you can even start worrying about whether or not this will meet any kind of environmental ideals that you would have. So that's also something to keep in mind, is that even though this information seems important, especially in our team, it's still not top of mind to people. So it still needs to be balanced with all this other content that we show. But let's say that here we have these two items and that they're relatively comparable. So at this stage, you might be ready to actually start comparing them. And what you might be able to see underneath is this rating that we try to implement with the data that we have at hand right now. So on the left, we have something that's deemed standard, and on the right, it's something that we say is better. But already now, people start to get skeptical because it's so easy to just put out claims and say oh, this is a good product, but this is even better. But what does this actually mean? Sustainability is such a fluffy topic that people are really also skeptical and scrutinizing around what goes behind these kind of ratings. So if we are to really back what we put out there by any kind of trustworthy data, we kind of need to also have this very easily at hand for people. So the next level, which would be maybe something that you would expand when you're on a product, could be something like this. And here's where it already starts to get kind of complicated. So what goes on here is that we try to break down each item's material into different categories to show the impact it has. So it could be CO2 emissions, water usage, and chemistry. That's typically something that's quite important when you have a fabric and it goes from the raw material into a fabric that you can actually make a dress from. But here you can also see another thing, is that on the left, we have polyester, and the dress you're looking at is the worst in a polyester category. But to the right, we have a dress that's better in the cotton category. And this is because it's actually extremely hard to compare across materials. You can't necessarily just say polyester compares like this to cotton, because those two have very different conditions. And here's another interesting thing, that when you really zoom in on the numbers, you can see that polyester actually has less of an impact than cotton does. So from this, you might even get the impression that polyester is a better or more sustainable material than cotton. But the problem is, it's very hard to just make that comparison like this directly. So judged on this, which product is actually better? And now we're actually only talking about a relatively straightforward dress. And I guess this is something that before I started working on this, I hadn't even thought about how my clothes were made. But I mean, these two dresses are probably consisting mainly of one material. But what if we're looking at a jacket like this? As you can see, it has a bunch of different materials. And then how do you rank that? It could be that the polyester has really good, it's been made out of recycled materials and it's super good, but maybe the acrylic that's in the inside is super harmful and has lots of chemicals. And how do we present this to people in an easily scannable way? Also bearing in mind that people are not at Zalando to get a whole lecture on sustainability or on fabric compositions. They're also just there to shop nice clothes and not be completely overwhelmed with all this data that we all of a sudden want to present to them. And another thing is, what I'm just talking about now is only about the actual material composition and what goes into the fabrication. What about all these other factors that are also important when you look at better items, such as working conditions in the factory, or packaging. Like, is this an item that's easy to just put in a box with a lot of other items that would make it shippable with more efficiently because you can stack it with other items, or is it something that requires a completely custom-made wrapping? And then we've only touched upon what happens before you purchase something. What about the once you've bought it and the first time you wash it? What if all the chemicals like flush out in the system and like damage the ocean? What if you need to like go down to the dry cleaner every time and use a lot of energy based on that? And how well does this item recycle, or how well can you mend it if something breaks? What's the overall life cycle of a product is something that's extremely important to also consider when you deem the sustainability-ness of an item. So already, as you can tell, and I'm sorry for being so like in the weeds about this, but it's the moment you just start unboxing this topic, you start to notice all this friction, like all these like dilemmas and all these many different details that you need to take into considerations when you really just wanted to create a super simple way for people to just like make better decisions, because that's what everyone wants. So how do you actually deal with this? That's really something that's been a lot on my mind ever since I started working on this topic. And it's something that can very easily make you be almost overwhelmed by how can you manage all these expectations in your design. And here I encountered this tech writer called Evgeny Morozov, who's actually talking a lot about this tendency that's arisen in the technology field within the last many years of solutionism, where you're actually trying to fix things with technology and really just oversimplify complex and very like deeply integrated social and political issues as if it's something that you can just like swoop technology over and make things super easy. And it comes from this tendency that specifically maybe is coming out of like Silicon Valley startups, where products and services are designed to really just like make people's lives more convenient and efficient and devoid of any kind of friction, because we're so afraid of actually facing hard and difficult priorities and decisions in our lives. And this is something that I think is very, very important to be aware of as designers in products and service, that even though we really want to solve customer problems, all problems aren't easily solved with technology. It's often something that requires quite a lot of understanding and really like accept of friction. And here is where I actually find my comfort in this person, and also with this wonderful image. So this person is a scholar and biologist called Donna Haraway, who's been specialized for the past many years about how the relationship is between people, society, and the technological advancements that's been made. And what she really says, and this is where I find my encouragement, is that we shouldn't be afraid to actually stay with this trouble. That she encourages us to, instead of just trying to problem solve and make everything like seem super easy, we should actually acknowledge that there are things that are very complex, and we shouldn't be afraid to explore trouble. And this is also, I think, one of our tasks as designers, is to reject these like techno fixes and instead aim to really like challenge people and to be brave and continuously try and like become wiser about the solutions we put out in the world. And this has also been paraphrased by another designer who made this critical feminist design manifesto, she called it. And what she's also saying is how we shouldn't just try to, in these times where things are becoming more and more entangled with technology, we can't just like like escape our responsibility when we design services that people use in their everyday life, that we are actually very much part of the not just part of the problem, but also part of the solution. Because we shouldn't be afraid to really dare be with our customers and be with our users in these conflicts that they face in their everyday life. Because I think what we're basically also doing as designers is that we're storytelling. And with our products, we're also telling stories about the world and the world of the people that we're designed for. And we shouldn't abandon this responsibility, I think, by just giving people the illusion that something is super easy and you can just save the world with one click or shop your way to redemption and everything will be fine. When we're dealing with topics that are as complex as climate change and working conditions, it is a really hard topic, and it is something that we need to empathize with people and show them that it seems like out of your comfort zone to actually be in this trouble with them. But I think it's something that we have a responsibility as designers and as people who work with products and services to actually stay with these problems along with our users. So that was a lot of talking, and I'm sorry for being a little bit philosophical towards the end, but I think it is something that's important to actually take a stand on when you're working on problems that have like deeply rooted societal consequences as well. So this was a lot of talk from me, but I think it's also really fun to hear what you people think. So I think I will stop sharing my screen now and maybe let Matthias share.
But before we share, let's just all have a round of applause for Cecilia.
Yay!
That was awesome. And that was our talk. And if you're interested in doing one, just let us know. Get in touch with us. You can write us a private message on the chat or find us in any of the other ways. But with such an interesting topic, we did not want to just leave it as just a talk. We thought it would be interesting to bring somebody else to have a conversation with us. So now we have Michal with us. Hi, Michal.
Hey, Matthias.
Could you introduce yourself? Sure.
So, hi everyone. My name is Michal and I'm a product manager in the DX sustainability team. So Cecilie and I work in the same team at Zalando, and we're on the same mission. And I'm very happy to join this very important conversation.
And it is a very important conversation, but also I think Cecilia just left us with a lot of open questions, and maybe if I could ask the first one, you talked a lot about complexity. You talked a lot about being honest about complexity. This is a complex topic, so is it okay to be honest about complexity and maybe leave people overwhelmed and perplexed, because you just left us a little bit like that, I guess? Or should we just risk giving people the impression that you can save the world with that one click? I don't know, Michal, what would you say?
So I think this is one of those questions where going to either of the extremes is probably not advisable, and we need to strike a very delicate balance. So fully share the sentiment of not hiding things under the rug, or not like putting paint over something just to hide the reality. On the other hand, we need to think about how to use our expertise as product developers, as designers, as experts in our domain. For us, it's fashion, but those could be different for everyone, and how to bridge that gap a little, right? So I understand, and it's impossible to get rid of the gap completely, but we do have some room here, so it's not like, oh my God, we're doomed. We just should just like go home and do nothing. So we do have room for bridging that gap, and for maybe not getting rid of the complexity completely, and not pretending that it's not there, but being honest about maybe a slice of this complexity that we are able to unpack of people. So like Cecilia mentioned, okay, maybe we're not able to tell you about all the materials that this jacket is made of, but we do our best to at least tackle one of them, but be aware that there are many others that we're not even tackling, right? So I think it's important to not mislead people, and it's often that a lot of data and a lot of like transparency can give people like the illusion of making informed decisions. So I'm a big fan of being like honest about things that we don't know, because like making decisions with the illusion of having the full picture is even worse than making illusion based on no data, because when you don't have the data, at least you know there's uncertainty. But if you have the illusion of knowing everything, then you're super certain about making a decision, and then suddenly you find out it's completely wrong. So to summarize, there's definitely a balance that we have to strike here, and we still have to be honest and transparent about these challenges to our users. That's my take on it.
I think our topic is specifically related also to trust. Like people need to really feel that this is not just like greenwashing, and we're not just doing this to sell more clothes. And I think a big lever of trust is especially transparency. And like this thing about including a rating, it's something that we also in the test that we've done, because often or quickly you have to think about, okay, what about all the products that would have a bad rating then? Would we just like get rid of them and only show the good products? But here I remember a user actually saying, if I saw that Zalando had a lot of badly rated products, it would actually make me trust them more, because then I wouldn't feel that they were like hiding things away from me. So that was just an interesting thought. I thought that like it's not something like it can actually be a positive selling point that we dare to put badly rated products on our site. We're not just trying to give the illusion that everything is that everything we have is good, and the things that aren't good we're just like not showing them.
Right. I mean, this is a one of those dilemmas that you are every day facing. You're asking yourself this question: where do we draw the line? Why are you passionate about this question? Why do you want to work on this question every day?
Well, I think it's a question that keeps on giving. I mean, it's really something where it's I think I'm very motivated by something that doesn't have a correct answer in a way. If we were just trying to solve the most efficient conversion flow, and we could just optimize and see who, like, what would make people put more and more items in the basket, I think that wouldn't make me go to work every day. I think things where there is all this like complexity and where you can't there isn't a right answer necessarily, but there's many indications and many different people also. Like it's so different what people find important? Like, and is this something, is it the most important thing for people when they shop? Is it because they don't care about the world, but maybe they care a lot about animals? Or it's like, it's something we discovered also in our research, that most people actually have a quite inherent need and desire to do good. It's just different things that people want. And I think it's super interesting to try to like uncover what people's like inherent need is, and their desire to do good. I think that's super motivating to try to entice the good side in people.
Mm. Yeah. So one thing that got stuck with me when you were going through your slides was that you wanted us to stay with the problem, to not try to like just say it's easy and we can solve the world with one click. So what do you mean by staying with the problem? Or can you give a few examples of this?
Yeah, I know it's a bit like abstract, and I also saw a question about it in the chat. And I think, well, as Michal also pointed out, I think it's definitely about not just seeing the problem in two simple terms, to say, okay, what we want to solve is just to sell more sustainable items, and then our problem is solved. But actually see, okay, we're dealing with a topic that has many like far-reaching consequences. So we can't just solve it by a higher conversion. We need to actually continuously challenge ourselves to see what are the aspects of this topic, and not just oversimplify it, neither for our customers, but also not for ourselves. So we need to have other objectives to solve than only make more money. And I think that's something we need to dare to do in a way. It's really something, if Zalando is serious about being a sustainable platform, we can't only look at the success of it through a commercial lens. We need to also know that it might be that it's at the expense of some conversions. It might be that we lose some money, but maybe we actually create some other consequences. So I think it's about expanding what a customer problem is, and seeing a problem with a broader lens. I don't know if that's specifically answering that, but I think it's about, we talk a lot about customer problems in our field, I think. And what we often do is simplify, okay, so what a customer needs, they need to buy clothes. How can we solve that? But when you're dealing with problems such as this one, that is a big problem that has wider reaching consequences, I think you need to widen your lens a bit to see how do we measure our success.
Michal, as a product manager, Cecilia was talking a little bit about the responsibility and being brave, and extending the problem and not simplifying. So how is that from the side of a product manager?
So I think it goes back a little bit to what Cecilia was saying about how do you define the success of your product, and what is the impact you're trying to make with the product. And we, from the very beginning, setting up the sustainability program, we were very clear that this is not about commercial gain. So what we actually thought about is, okay, there is this growing trend in the world of people trying to stay true to their values with their everyday choices. And in 2018, there was a study that said 68% of customers can abandon or change a brand based on a brand's view on a political issue, right? So this is something where we see where we see that we're in this for the long term, because our hypothesis is that few years down the line, sustainability will no longer be a delighter, will no longer be like the cherry on the cake and optional. It will be something our customers will be expecting from us. But knowing how complex this topic is, we need probably years, if not even a decade, to get to that stage. So we better get started now, right? And I think for me, also what I think about when Cecilia mentioned staying with the problem is also staying in the ecosystem. So we're not like an independent island that is responsible for the full value chain from like the beginning to the end, right? Of course, if you try to trace back like a pair of jeans from all the way from the field where the cotton was cultivated all the way to a finished product, you have to realize like this super long supply chain with its own issues, with its own problems, etc. Right? So there is definitely a lot of work to be done on like each of those steps, and the industry, like the fashion industry, has been already working on this for more than 10 years to improve the situation. But for me, staying in the problem is making that work despite knowing that the light at the end of the tunnel is not end of this year, it's not end of next year, it's probably like 5 to 10 years from now that we'll actually maybe have enough data from the supply chain, we'll have enough sophisticated framework that can tell you enough about the product and really answer this question in a simpler way. But we're definitely not there, and we're staying with the problem by making progress and sharing our progress with the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm. And I think actually in a way, like this mantra of staying with the problem can also be seen sort of as a coping mechanism, because I think if I just wanted to like set a check mark at my work and say, okay, now my job is done, then I think this topic is the wrong topic, because you really need to continuously see it as like a life journey, almost like you continuously gain more knowledge, and you have to learn how to recreate this knowledge into something that can help other people, and of course not overwhelm them. I'm not really not advocating for like making people apathetic and overwhelmed, but more about people are dealing with these topics every day, and they have to make sacrifices, and they have to make priorities. And if we just go out and like give them the impression that there aren't these problems and priorities, then I think we're losing, and I don't think we're failing people also.
That takes me to a question that I see on the chat, somebody's asking, what do you think about the dilemma that sustainability comes with a price, that not everybody can afford it? So it is actually meant for a specific group of people, and it's not an inclusive thing.
I'm actually interested in hearing a bit more about what is meant from this question. Like what is it? In which way does Mariana think it's exclusive?
Mariana, do you want to unmute yourself and
just so I understand?
You can type in the chat also.
Yeah, also maybe.
Yeah.
Or you can video on and your microphone or whatever you'd like.
But it could be something around the price, I would assume.
Yeah, sure. Because it's definitely something that we often encounter also when we interview people, that there is this notion that sustainability means super luxurious like ingredients. Like if it's sustainable beauty products, for instance, it's made out of these extremely rare ingredients, or if it's fashion, then it's made out of very, very rare materials. But I think one of my like main things about like a more sustainable wardrobe, for instance, is also just using more of what you already own, and maybe buying pre-owned, or maybe like repairing your clothes. Or for me, there's a lot of like actually economy in being more mindful with what you buy. I remember there was this user who we interviewed who said that she always grew up with her mom telling her, we're not rich enough to buy cheap shoes. And I thought that was such an interesting, I know it's also very like privileged to be like, you should just buy a really expensive pair of shoes, but it's also like a mindset change that it is actually not really cheap to just buy 10 cheap t-shirts instead of one t-shirt. Because if you end up like buying 10 cheap t-shirts every year, then it ends up adding up in the long run. Of course, they're also very like hyper luxurious, products that are made out of like very, very expensive materials that are sustainable. But I think I would really love to work more towards opening up the sustainability topic and opening people's eyes to see that it's not about like buying really expensive things. It's also about being more mindful of the things that you already have.
So,
and I also know, can I throw in a little comment here as well, because I'm a colleague with Cecilie, and I also know that your fashion buying trends are very on point to what you do as a designer. Can you tell us a little bit story about that and why it's so impressive? Am I allowed to throw you on the spot here?
Oh God.
This was one of the most amazing things, because Cecilie is always the best dressed when we used to go to the office, always the best dressed, and also very, very sound buying system.
I think one thing that's often like the fashion industry in general, and now I'm like saying things that I know, like Zalando is definitely also a big player in this, but I guess the fashion industry is also thriving of people's desire to just continuously be on trend and have the season's must-haves. And that's often not like what maybe works better for most people. And I think you can really become more sustainable in your choices if you have maybe a little bit more of an idea of which items work for you or what items would work with what you already own, instead of like, oh, this year it's all about buffalo shoes, so I need to buy them. And then you end up with a pair of buffalo shoes that you can't really combine with the rest of your clothes. Yeah, I don't know.
But Cecilie also commits to not buying as many new items as anyone else. And I think, yeah, was it a whole year that you went without buying a new item? Almost?
Yeah, at least I had like a limit of how many items I could buy.
So fantastic effort there from Cecilie. So she's the real deal when it comes to sustainability. So is Michal as well.
Can I just add something to the question on price? So I want to debunk a little bit like the myth that's more sustainable fashion is necessarily more expensive. So sometimes, so yes, on average, it's maybe like 5 to 10% more expensive, but you can also find situations where it's not more expensive at all. So if you look at the price of raw materials, organic cotton, if you want to buy it, you know, for your factory, is not even more expensive than conventional cotton. So that's one point. The second point is you have to remember that like price and the amount of clothes we buy or the amount of products we use is not the only trade-off that that we can make for sustainability. This is also something we found out in our research that Adam was part of, by the way, that people are willing to make different trade-offs depending on their life situations, and some of those trade-offs are maybe convenient. So convenience could be waiting for my delivery 1 week instead of having it shipped the next day, because if it ships the next day, it probably flew on a plane. An extreme form of inconvenience, but very good for sustainability, could be switching from clothes that are ready made and ready for us to consume to clothes that are made to order. So something doesn't get produced until I order it. Of course, extreme inconvenience, I would have to wait 6 weeks for my t-shirt, but the benefit of that would be no overproduction, because we're only producing something that someone has already bought, right? So of course, I'm putting here extremes to illustrate a point, but that's just to show that price doesn't have to be the only factor that we need to make a trade-off about.
And not to put you on the spot, Michal, but now that you are debunking myths, what are those things that you think that people really don't understand about sustainability that would be would help them a lot to see that it's not such a trade-off in the end?
So definitely this price is definitely a good myth. Another one, which is not really a myth, but something that we often don't realize about ourselves, is like how honest we are about our life's choices and what we do, and not only for ourselves but also like for the world. So this especially comes up in our work when we try to do user research, when we encounter this massive attitude behavior gap when it comes to sustainability, right? So to maybe explain the term, attitude behavior gap is the difference between what people say they do or what they would be willing to do on paper and what they actually do in real life. And because sustainability is such a topic where there's social pressure to do this, people are more likely to be dishonest about either their intentions or even their past experience. An extreme case of that was a survey that we did where we asked customers if they have bought a more sustainable article on Zalando in the past 12 months. And then we cross-reference those responses with actual purchase history of those people. And it turns out only 21% of people who said they bought something sustainable actually did it, right? So that shows you the scale of this attitude behavior gap of obviously just from one perspective, but this is definitely something we have to watch out for as we try to reduce the risk of whatever we're shipping to our customers by employing with user research. And I guess this also translates to like how honest are we with ourselves about our daily habits, right? Do I think I'm really exercising 3 times per week? Or is it more like if I check the calendar, it would be more like 3 times per month, right? Am I really only buying like what I need, or am I buying to like make myself feel good and if I'm okay with that? So I think that's another one of those.
Mm-hmm. And that's also what makes because we do a lot of user research at Zalando in general. Like we always try to talk to people before we launch anything. And that's also what makes this topic both hard but interesting, because there's a lot of goodwill. And like the moment, like you can ask people like, what's important for you when you buy things? And they're like, yeah, I would just go and buy 10 dresses and then get them shipped, and I can like try them on and then send them back, and like it's perfect. And all is good. But then the moment you mention sustainability, they're like, oh yeah, that's also super, super important to me. And then like, oh, because they just remembered. But it's really like there is a big willingness to really buy into this. But the actual behavior is often quite a different story.
What do you know about the data? Now, like there's a question from the audience, and I think it's really interesting that what does the data say about the impact this kind of sustainability information that you're now sharing has when it's presented together with the product after the fact, so to speak, not in the user research?
I'm sorry. Is the question, is what we show to customers really influencing their behavior?
That's what I would understand from this question. Yes.
Yeah. So it's for us a little bit difficult to answer this question, because you have to remember that different products, offer different features and different benefits for our customers, and the sustainability is often not the only differentiator. So for example, if we are comparing how likely people are to buy different products, if we say, okay, products that we consider more sustainable are chosen more often than maybe less sustainable products, which is true, by the way, it's very hard to attribute that choice only to sustainability, because they happen maybe to be from a different material that people like, or maybe they have a different shape or a better better color, or whatever other feature that people really care about, right? So that's really difficult to make that distinction. But we're definitely hearing a lot, again, like declaration from customers that if they had two products to choose from and they're mostly comparable on all the features that they care about, and one product was labeled as more sustainable, they would definitely go for the more sustainable. But doing that sort of comparison in real life, it's more tricky than it sounds. So we don't really have like a definite scientific answer for this.
And so, Cecilia, when you can't measure it from a data point of view, how do you know that what you're doing is, even though you're staying with the problem, moving in the right direction?
Yeah, that's a good question, because also, like I said, we already said from the beginning that our team's measure of success is not necessarily commercial. It's not about like, well, one of our measures is that we want to increase the share of more sustainable products that are sold, but not like we should sell overall more products. I think the success is also more in the long run, like, and how do people overall impression of Zalando change? I mean, do people more and more see us as a company that is a trustworthy and like responsible platform to buy clothes from? So I guess it's also more about, yeah, looking into like long-term relationships and seeing, do we get like signals from people that what we're doing is also resonating somehow with them, and not only from like, do they buy more clothes, but like, do they continuously buy from the same like more sustainable collection? Or we also have like CO2 offsetting in the checkout. We can see like, what is that something that more and more people are adopting? So
Is it?
I would say,
Yes.
isn't it? Michal?
Yes, it is. It definitely is. So we're actually trying to see this on a couple of fronts, right? So first, we're trying to, what Cecilia said, try to see how many customers repeatedly go for more sustainable choices, right? Because you can say once it's an accident, right? So we don't care about someone accidentally buying something sustainable, but if you see that they're doing this consistently, that could also mean the CO2 checkout. That's one of the signals. The other signal is, in our regular customer satisfaction surveys, we ask the question, how satisfied you are with the information about product sustainability on Zalando, right? And that's another measure. Like, another front is our brand monitoring surveys, where we ask people to rate different brands on different dimensions, and a wide enough choice of sustainable products is, for example, one of them, or being a responsible and sustainable platform could be another one. So we try to rather look at these mid to long-term changes in the customer behavior than these very immediate ones. Oh, add to cart, or buy more.
So I was going through the questions, and now that you were mentioning about the brand and the brand image, there is one about marketing sustainability, and what is the hardest thing when you are marketing sustainability? So what can you say about that?
So I think this is something that maybe requires an explanation of a term that Cecilia introduced in her presentation, and that term is greenwashing. So I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with that, but greenwashing is a term that was coined to highlight these, let's call them, evil practices of companies and brands that basically pretend to do something green, something more sustainable, and actually spend more money on marketing what they do than on behaving actually better, right? So this is all those cases where a brand would make like a tiny improvement somewhere that maybe, I don't know, shifts the scale to 1%, but then spend millions on advertising this. But that's only one possible way of greenwashing. Another would be being vague or misleading or purpose, where the customers think you're doing more than you're actually doing, right? So and I think this is probably the biggest challenge when it comes to marketing sustainability, is that it's very easy to cross that boundary of, especially if you're trying to simplify the message and like avoid the unnecessary complexity. It's very easy to cross that boundary and like fall into greenwashing and simply mislead your customers, even if you had the best intention. It can just happen by accident or by making these trade-offs, right? And Cecilia mentioned this example in her presentation, where we try to avoid calling products sustainable and we don't call them sustainable, right? Because we know there's no such thing as a fully sustainable product, and people might think that, right? So we try to find a little bit terms that are a little bit awkward, like more sustainable, which like takes up this much on the screen, and it's not really like well translatable or localizable into all the languages. So that's constantly these kind of like risks that you have to navigate around. And it's like, oh, on one hand you have the risk of confusing customer because you're like complicating your message. On the other hand, you have the risk of being untrue and misleading because you made it too simple, and therefore customers think you're better than you actually are.
Okay. Well, Trisha just got in a question. I was about to ask a question to jump in, but I thought that was actually an interesting one around taxes with purchasing unsustainable goods, especially in apparel. Do you think some sort of government intervention or something like this would help? Or what is the government doing in this area? Or are there mandates in terms of purchasing unsustainable?
So what is happening is definitely like on the EU level, there are attempts to at least kind of standardize this informational aspect of sustainability. And you might, it's not exactly that, but the comparison that we often hear even from our customers that want us to help them is this energy efficiency of electric appliances, where you have like A+, A, B, C, and whatever, where you kind of at a glance see like how energy efficient the product is, right? So in light of that, like the EU has not banned selling like inefficient products, but at least the customers have that choice. But I think it's also interesting to see what you can do as a service or as a product, where you can maybe be a little bit flexible and leave the choice to the customer in some areas, but then on the other areas, you actually draw a hard line and you said like, this is not something we're tolerating, right? And even if the governments, and it's actually very, even if the governments don't allow like modern slavery, or don't allow children to be employed, or don't allow people to not be paid overtime, that still happens in different parts of the world, right? So I think this is one of those examples where you cannot solve this really completely by regulations, but as a company, you can draw the line and say like, hey, we demand audits, we demand documents, and as soon as like something like this comes to light, we take action. And an example of that was like, we completely dropped a brand from our store after information came to light that after the COVID pandemic, they stopped paying workers and withdrew from their orders, etc. A few days later, like all the products from the brands disappeared from our platform. So I would say we cannot wait for regulations to solve this, and we have to find other incentives and other ways.
All right. I think we're almost done with time, but before I let you guys run away, and thank you so much for sharing as well. Also, yeah, that is true. One of the things that most surprised me is now working within Zalando is they're hard on being intolerant of intolerance. No, yeah, something. They do draw the line, which is really, really amazing to see, and they don't wait around for, you know, being pushed by government or stuff like this to take action. But anyway, one thing that I always loved doing when I was working with Michal and Cecilie, and also if you also want to work with Michal and Cecilie and you're looking for a great job, you can apply at zalando.de/jobs. No, you can, but if you don't want to, that's also fine. You get to work with such lovely colleagues. One thing that I wanted to ask you guys, maybe on a practical, if I wanted to become more sustainable, or the audience here wants to become more sustainable, what do you recommend they follow, or do you have any great resources? I know that the Higgs Index is one that you love, Michal, but is there any others that you might think worth sharing right now that we could possibly share within the crowd?
I'll add to that, as a consumer, but also as a designer, if there's anything, sites and things that you started following or looking into, that would be like, from this designer perspective, that would be really, really interesting, but both consumer and designer.
Right. I think as a consumer, I try to look at this beyond fashion, and I don't have many resources like from the top of my head, but I remember seeing like very practical breakdowns, maybe by some designers, of like, what can you do as a person that makes the most impact in the world, especially with regards to climate change. And really the top three, no matter what source you're looking at, are, hey, reduce or give up eating meat. The second is like, stop long distance flights, or reduce, switch to maybe different modes of transportations, etc. Right? So I think it's really important to make those recommendations very pragmatic, and not put like insurmountable like boundaries in people, and put them in relations to the impact, right? Oh, you can do all of these things, but in the end, like, the impact is this big, but you can do just one thing and then maybe achieve a much greater impact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's also a platform called Good On You that has a lot of different ranks of, like, if you want to buy like a swimsuit, what are some good brands to buy like from, or that have different background stories. And I think it's also important to point out in this topic, because it's so easy to get overwhelmed, because where to even start on this? Like, does it even matter if I stop eating meat, for instance, because all my flight activities are so like damaging as well? And I think for me, it's really important not to like succumb to these whataboutisms where it's like, oh, but you don't eat meat, but what about this? I mean, I think you can't expect anyone to be like 100% responsible in all their endeavors, but I think it's just about figuring out, like Michal also talked about, what things are you willing to trade off, and then maybe like, okay, if actually it's not so important for you to really quickly get your deliveries, maybe it's okay to pick up a delivery point, because that's also more sustainable than getting it shipped to your house, because it's more efficient. And yeah, I think mainly my inspirational tips as a designer are very like clothes driven, because we're in a clothing platform. But one of the sites that I really like, it's underwear. I think underwear for some reason is really big in sustainability. There's a lot of like nice sustainable underwear brands, but there's one called Organic Basics, and they've done some really nice breakdowns of like what is like how are their clothes made, and like what are the different impact sections of their items. And they also had a really interesting initiative, which is a low impact website. So like we often don't think about how much energy is actually being used when you build a website, like, and have these massive images that users need to have really like a lot of data going to download or to view on their screen. And they made a low impact website version where they don't send unnecessary like heavy files and all these things. I think that's a really inspiring resource.
Michal, what was the Beyond Fashion? I Googled Beyond Fashion and there's just so many things I can't find. How can we find that link?
No, I was just saying Beyond Fashion as a not only for fashion. It's not like a name of anything.
Oh, just to think about beyond.
Just to think beyond fashion and more like lifestyle. But I just posted a couple of links more for everyday life, which the first one, the use less, is presenting alternatives. This is one actually Adam found when we were doing some design work and shared with the team, and I love that. It's a really simple walkthrough of showing some product alternatives that you use every day. And the other one is the Nachhaltiger Leben in Berlin Instagram, which I also think it's useful for a consumer, but also from a design perspective. They often offer these super easy side-by-side comparison of two alternatives, and really visualize the impact either in terms of CO2 emissions or some other impact scale, to really show the difference between the two choices you have as a customer. Unfortunately in German, but the visual language I think is clear enough, so it's also understandable for people that don't speak German.
Do you have any food related industry references? Besides eat less meat?
Besides eat less meat, I actually remember seeing a full breakdown of different kinds of food in terms of like their climate impact. I'll try to find it after the talk if you want to ping me on social media, or I'll just post it on Twitter if I find it. But the interesting learning from that was that nuts are one of the very few plants that are climate positive. So it's actually they consume more CO2 than it's used to cultivate them. And of course, like red meat was the highest ranking offender.
But actually also this nachhaltiger Leben that Michal just mentioned often have food comparisons, like one where they put a Caesar salad with chicken up against a Greek salad with feta, and you would think like, oh, meat is always the worst option, but feta cheese is super because like it takes a lot of milk to produce. So there's often also some fun.
And I would also encourage people to look into sustainability beyond consumption. There is a lot of impact as designers we can make in a lot of different areas. So consuming, of course, there's a lot of CO2 impact there, but there is health, mental health sustainability as a whole area that we could look into, especially nowadays. And there is a full gamut of options if you want to make impact in the area of sustainability. So not to minimize the work you guys are doing, just to say there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of areas to explore if you don't feel particularly leaning towards fashion. There's still a lot you can do.
Yeah, and I think in general, as designers, we should think about what do the services we design for, what is the impact they're leaving in the world? Are we like, maybe we're solving something very specific to our company, but what is the more like broader effects in the world? Are we like making a positive impact, or like are we leaving more damage behind than we solve problems? I think that's always a very helpful or a valuable question to ask ourselves in our job.
Can I add on another question quickly, if we have time still, Marty?
Yes.
How would you advise people, designers here now and in general, to convince their team or their boss or their product manager to change projects or to add this factor of designing sustainably? Is there any data, information, anything Zalando shares that we can use to convince our bosses that we should design like this?
I mean, I think as Michal also mentioned already, it's becoming more and more almost of a hygiene factor for a lot of customers that companies are responsible. It's not necessarily something a company can advertise even that much anymore, because it's more of a risk of a lot of criticism if a company gets like attention for being very unsustainable or very like irresponsible in their like operations or with the services they create. So I think it's definitely something that, I mean, I would hope companies would do it also because they want to like contribute to a better world. But if not, I think it's always a risk of getting a lot of negative attention if you're operating on very irresponsible terms.
Yeah, in terms of data, there's one research company that works a lot on sustainability, and they're partnering also with the Sustainable Apparel Coalition that we work with, and they've done a number of studies with different brands, and some of them are publicly available. And I think a lot of these data, a lot of the reports show the same story over and over, that kind of as we go through different generations, like from like boomers, XYZ, etc., like every one of these groups is more and more aware of these problems and is more willing to act in a responsible way. So I think if that's not a good predictor of what's happening in the future, I don't know what is. So highly recommend to look at how values in general influence people's behavior, and how they express them in their everyday choices.
I love this one. And just for everyone to know, all of these links that are being shared now, we're capturing and we'll put in an email to everyone who registered and the rest of our followers as well, and a few days after this event.
Can I just add something to Cecilia's previous response? So I know about responsibility of designing products, but also the opportunity. So I know we're maybe painting a little bit of a gloom picture here. Oh, it's so complex. Oh, there are all these trade-offs, etc. But on the other hand, I want to highlight that first of all, building products or services of any kind is a great way of having leverage on making an impact to the world, right? Because if you're designing something that then like hundreds or thousands of millions of customers use, depending on your, of course, situation, that's where you can also make a much bigger impact than being just one consumer, right? And then the second point I wanted to highlight is especially for the digital space and folks designing digital experience. The digital world offers so many opportunities to tell those stories about sustainability. Like, think of when was the last time you went into a physical store, and when viewing a product at the store, you had all this information available that you can get online with one click, right? So yes, I know we're not visiting physical stores for a while, but still, like, when you do, you just see like a shoe lying there on the shelf, and maybe you see a price of this shoe, and that's it, right? Like, you don't have like a booklet attached to it saying, oh, this is how it was made, this is what the materials were like, and this is like, you know, you can ask the assistant, but they cannot have all the information about all the products in their head, right? So I think there's also opportunities to design digital experience in a way that don't really work in a physical way, a physical world, at least not yet, and that's also exciting and I think pretty positive.
Mm. And we knew when we started with the planning this event that the conversation would probably extend beyond the time we had. So it is with a sad face that I have to say that time's up. But that doesn't mean that we should stop having these conversations. And you can reach out to us or reach out to the speakers. Like Dee was saying, we will have a wrap-up email where we will share the links that were just shared. And also, now you know their names. Now you can stalk them on LinkedIn or wherever you prefer stalking people, as you can do with us. And also we have, for those of you who don't know, we have a Slack group. So you can go onto our website and find us there. I think before I wrap up the event, I would like to thank Michal and Cecilie a lot for spending the time with us and sharing with us. And if that's okay with all of you, I would like to ask you to unmute yourselves and clap again for them.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you all for staying with us. I know some people dropped through the evening, so thanks for staying. We're done. We finished, and we have some information that we wanted to share before we leave, and I will pass it on to Adam to share a bit.
Yeah, so two quick things very, very quickly. There's an amazing network going on for service designers in the SDD community. SDD Milan, SDD India, SDD Lyon, SDD, there's a bunch of different grassroots organizations, and SDD Milan is a very, very great community. They are doing this project called Transforming Designers, where they want to reiterate the value of design, understand what designers do in their daily operations, and better promote their work. And to do this, they would love to talk about it more, but also understand and kind of get a pulse check of the community. It would be an absolute pleasure if everyone here could take 2 minutes to go to the website transformingdesigns.com and fill out the survey. I did it. It takes like 2 minutes. It's really not that much, but it's very, very informative, and they are really, really open and transparent about the results, and they want to make a report. So what you give, I'm sure, will be a great return on investment. And secondly, our next event, which will be coming up in October, which fingers crossed will be with the founder and CEO of Snook, Sarah Drummond. She is freaking awesome. She's actually the reason that I got into design in the first place. I think it was something like 15, no, it wasn't 15 years ago. How old am I now? 12 years ago, 10 years ago, or something like this. I heard one of her talks, and she was an industrial designer that got sick of it, started her own agency in service designs, has been working with so many different organizations. I think our first project was how to communicate better with police in the community. She's so fascinating and so interesting and doing a great job. So we wanted to invite her for a fireside chat, a much more open conversation, much more open dialogue about how she's influenced service design, how she's brought it to public services. So I would, oh no, Michal, that's sad. Yeah, I would definitely encourage you guys to all return in the first, possibly the first Wednesday of October. And then after that, we'll probably have people like Adam St. John Lawrence or Martin Jordan that will also join us for a conversation as well. So more great things to come.
Adam, quickly, can you check that transforming design URL and see and quickly post it?
Transformingdesigners.com.
Okay, can you post it in the chat?
Yes, I can. Thank you everyone for filling that out for us as well.
And while Adam is typing the right URL, like I said, feel free to get in touch with us via any of our multiple social media options. And also we will be posting the video of this session. So in case you want to revisit the chat we just had, the talk from Cecilia, you will have a link to do so. We will also share that on the wrap-up email. And you can stay informed about what's going on the community, like I said, on our Slack group. You can request an invite on our website. And that is it for today. That is it from our side. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And I will now stop sharing to properly say goodbye to everybody that is left. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here, for spending your evening with us, and see you next time.
Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks, Cecilia and Michal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. It was great.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.